Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Berman, the host of the Cyber Hero Adventure Show. Thanks so much for being with us as we shine the light on the unsung cyber heroes who toil in anonymity to keep us safe. Someone recently asked me, Gary, how did you learn about all this stuff? And I said, well, I'll tell you, I'm continually learning, but my big start came from right here. This is the source of the superpower conferences. Over a 3-year period, I've been to over 53 cybersecurity conferences and listened and learned from the smartest people in the entire world about this incredibly complicated, important, and interesting stuff. Speaking of important people, let me introduce today's guest. Hey, Terry, how you doing?
Hey, Gary, how you doing, man?
Why are you laughing?
Because you're awesome. We've been on the show before together. It's got great reach. It's very educational, and I always have a good time hanging out with you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You read that script perfectly, so well done.
I'll wait for my check in the mail, or you can Venmo me or PayPal or whatever the kids do today.
Exactly. Okay, that was not on the script. So let me be funny, and you do cybersecurity. That way we stay in our lanes.
Okay.
Really, one of the things I really do like a lot about you and about the work that you're doing is you have a great sense of humor. And, when we were talking prior to the show, we were talking about this role of FUD, which everyone knows is, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that's how this industry, communicates for good reason. There's a lot to be afraid of and uncertain and doubtful of. However, our mission in part is to kind of pivot the industry from, kind of FUD to fun. And I oftentimes think of it as like this giant aircraft carrier where the contours of the community, the cybersecurity and IT ecosystems are kind of slow to change. But inside all the planes, kinetic, like an aircraft carrier, just crazy. I mean, what do you think of the idea of trying to pivot the industry, at least in part, from FUD to fun? Can we do it?
Yeah, you can do it. Given the scale and scope of the attacks and the problems that we're seeing today, it's hard to say that that's fun unless you enjoy going after the bad guys, which is fun. Making it interesting and entertaining and fun, it is possible. There definitely is a lot more FUD out there than is warranted, but I get it because FUD sells. FUD garners the headlines. FUD grabs your attention. I think if something was fun in terms of IoT security, it's not going to be an attention grabber as the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. I mean, the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's still true today, even in cybersecurity, unfortunately.
It's interesting you say that because just yesterday I had the opportunity, someone sent me what now I think is a very kind of famous commercial that showed this gorilla playing a set of drums. Something's coming, something on the air, oh Lord, and it shows this gorilla playing drums. And it ended up being this extraordinarily successful commercial for Cadbury chocolate. And people were going like, okay, what does that have to do with Cadbury chocolate? Nothing. But people just did remember this guy in a gorilla suit, playing the drums, and their sales went up considerably as a result of this.
Good for them. I just wish there'd be something similar for cybersecurity.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to kind of build on that for a second. I mean, one of the things that I experienced first as an attendee of these conferences, and then I matriculated to become a cybersecurity reporter, covering conferences and going to all the the trade shows and stuff, is it's almost like sensory overload. There's just so much information coming at you at once from so many different directions in so many different ways using whatever the current kind of buzzwords are. How did you break through that in order to capture the attention of Microsoft?
Interesting. Okay, so this actually.
Right, you thought I was just rambling,
No,
for something to do here. I mean,
I thought you were going to ask me, how do I cut through all the noise and get to what I'm really looking for at conferences? And I was
okay.
going to say, you go in with a battle plan.
Right.
You got to go in looking for a specific set of answers to a specific problem set that you're trying to solve. So I'll give you an example. For those of your viewers that don't remember or don't know me, I used to work at the U.S. National Security Agency as an offensive cyber operator. So one of the things that we would do, and government employees continue to do this, did prior to COVID, was attend DEF CON and Black Hat, because we were, as offensive guys, we were always looking for cutting edge vulnerabilities or exploits that we could leverage on behalf of our country to go after foreign adversaries. So even though you go to those, particularly Black Hat, there's a lot of sensory overload, a lot of, new companies, new technologies, but we would typically go out with a battle plan saying, okay, here's what we need to accomplish. Are there capabilities out there that will help us accomplish these tasks? So to cut through it, I would suggest going out there with a desire or a battle plan that says, I need to answer these questions to these problem sets. Is my solution, or are there solutions here that I can leverage or take advantage of? That's what we would do.
It sounds like a great idea because of so many opportunities and so many ways to get to lose focus, just because of things
Absolutely.
you're seeing and experiencing, people you meet, all of which are great. I mean, everybody at these conferences are great in their own ways, for their own reasons and stuff like that. So that makes a lot of sense. But, it's interesting. Oh, wait a minute. We have some breaking news here. The total installed base of Internet of Things connected devices worldwide is projected to amount to 30.9 billion units by 2025, a sharp increase from where we are now. Wow. That is amazing coincidence that we happen to have this breaking news, and we do have a subject matter expert on IoT devices. How lucky is that?
Your timing is impeccable, Gary. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so no, just on a more substantive note, I mean, what our audience is going to be incredibly interested in, as are we, is how did you get the attention of such an amazing company as Microsoft, and tell us a little bit more about your origin story too, so the audience can get the context.
Yeah, I think what it is the core technology that we built to basically unpack and reverse engineer firmware. So that's the core gist of what we're really good at. So let me go back to the beginning. Let me go back to say like 1985 with a Commodore 64 and a 300 baud dial-up modem. Yeah, I got in trouble with the law with those two pieces of gear because I was doing dumpster diving and some credit card fraud stuff online. That got me in trouble with the police and put me in juvenile detention for a while. But that whole incident as a teenager didn't prohibit me from getting a security clearance many, many years later, working for the U.S. National Security Agency, doing offensive cyber operations during the global war on terror.
Wow.
Our particular mission with the group that I was in was to look at these embedded devices, what we now call IoT devices today. But back then, in the early 2000s, they were basically embedded devices. These were everything from Wi-Fi routers to security cameras to fax machines and printers that were connected to the internet, just like we have today. It was just called a different label back then because there weren't as many of them. There weren't 30.9 billion of them on the planet at the time.
Right.
So our job from an intelligence point of view was to collect intelligence from the devices that these networks were connected to. So how do you do that? Well, you have to understand what the vulnerabilities are in these devices. Okay, great. How do you find the vulnerabilities? Well, that required us to actually go out to manufacturer websites like HP or Linksys or TrendNet or Netgear and download the available firmware images that they post out there for customers like you and me, and unfortunately the terrorists as well at the time, could download the firmware. So we would download this firmware, and then we would manually pick it apart, unpack it, because firmware is almost like a zip file. You have to have a tool that unzips it to unpack it and look at the underlying file structure. We would try and find vulnerabilities. Once we found the vulnerabilities, then we'd have to ask ourselves, well, could these be weaponized for an offensive use? Maybe for us to put in a backdoor or an implant or something like that that would allow us to collect intelligence. So, I did this for 5 years working for the U.S. National Security Agency. But one thing I realized, when other intelligence agencies would come to us to see what kind of work we were doing, many of those agencies wanted to borrow our capabilities. And unfortunately, management at the time said no. And I was stunned because I thought we were all on the same team here fighting the same war on terror.
You mean management of NSA?
Yes. So for example, a team from CIA would come to us to see what the latest and greatest technology was in what we were developing. And we would demonstrate what we did and show the results. Wow, we'd really like to have access to that capability. NSA said, no, go build your own. Law enforcement would come. We like that capability. Could we borrow it? No, go build your own.
Wow. Why?
And it was, at first you wonder, why would that be the case? But then I understood the rationale. So the NSA is their primary job is long-term signals intelligence collection. Okay, they're not. The CIA is more like a paramilitary organization or components thereof, where these guys will go out, get bad guys, wrap them up, bring them back, kind of like special forces. So these guys, according to NSA mentality, the CIA, those guys are like the cowboys out in the wild, wild west. They'll shoot first, ask questions later.
Wow.
When you do that, you have a possible propensity to waste a capability where the enemy actually sees it after the smoke clears and then realizes how you've done it. And so now that capability is rendered useless. So that's the CIA NSA beef, okay? Law enforcement. So let's say I build a capability that can spy on you or track you, and you're a criminal that law enforcement is after. Law enforcement uses that capability, arrests you, puts you in jail, puts you on trial. What's your attorney going to do for your defense? He's going to ask, what techniques and capabilities did you use to surveil my customer? And so now you have to reveal this capability in a public forum, open court. So therefore, again, the capability that the NSA developed that would prefer to keep it secret now is exposed in a courtroom. So that's their mentality, not to share these capabilities, whether it's right or wrong. I mean, that's one basis of their decision. So when I heard that, and this happened a number of times, I decided I was going to leave the NSA and start a company that basically developed these hacking capabilities one time and then sell them to all the different agencies that required them. So you couldn't have another agency tell another agency that they couldn't use it. So that's how I started Tactical Network Solutions in 2007. Slowly over time, I started pulling in other employees from the National Security Agency, and we started to develop this capability, an automated capability, to reverse engineer firmware and weaponize vulnerabilities for our government customers, law enforcement, intelligence community, military. And then the customer base expanded to friendly foreign governments. We're all fighting the same war here. So as the demand for these zero-day exploits increased, we needed more and more automated ways to identify these vulnerabilities that could be weaponized. So we created something called the Centrifuge Platform, which basically you take that firmware I mentioned from a manufacturer's website, put it in our platform, and then within minutes it will tell you where all the vulnerabilities are, where the passwords are, if there were any, whether there's any cryptographic material like SSL, certs, public-private keys, all kinds of good stuff that you could leverage as an offensive person. So one day we decided to present this capability to a wider audience, and there happened to be investors in the audience. And on our way out of the presentation, the investors approached us and said, hey, have you ever thought about using this platform you built to help defend IoT? So IoT is in vogue now. So it's no longer embedded devices, it's now IoT.
Right. Uh-huh.
So we said, being an offensive guy, we only have to be right one time. If you're on the defensive side, you have to be right every time and think of every possible edge case. I like my odds a little bit better.
I mean, that is just unbelievably unfair. I mean,
but it's true. It's true. And, we kind of brushed them off, kind of went back to our office, but they were pretty persistent. And it took them about 3 or 4 months to convince me and my partner that there's a much bigger, broader market opportunity to defend and help protect manufacturers and users of these IoT devices than there is in providing offensive capabilities. So what we decided to do, we came to an agreement where they would give us $1.5 million to launch a new company that's not related to my government contracting company, Tactical Network Solutions. We would spin out the core team, we would spin out the technology and create a brand new company, which we end up calling ReFirm Labs. So ReFirm for reverse engineering firmware, ReFirm Labs. And we focused on just using the platform to better identify vulnerabilities that manufacturers could address and help them ship more secure products as they were being built. We started landing customers almost right out of the gate, like AT&T, Charter Communications, Netgear, Emerson Electronics. I mean, some big names, big names.
Yeah.
So along the same time that we started the company and started getting these large customers, we were encouraged to apply to the RSA Innovation Sandbox. Now, you heard that we used to go to Black Hat and DEF CON and TorCon and Recon and all these other hacker cons. We never, as government employees or as Tactical Network Solutions, ever went to RSA, because that's the suit stuff, that's the business stuff, and we're not going to get any answers on developing offensive capabilities at an RSA conference. So,
let me just ask about that a little bit further to amplify.
Yeah, sure.
Remember, we're live, so say whatever you want. But it's an interesting thing because, as part of something we're launching, micro think tanks, the Cyber Hero Network, we're actually applying this well-known concept referred to as wisdom of the crowd, meaning that, you can have one, great keynote speaker and everything, but really the collective, if in a safe and appropriate environment, actually will be able to add much more to it than any one person. And I came up with that, kind of concept after having been to one of the big conferences, and it was just sensory overload. And, that buyers and sellers are hoping to have random interactions to see if they can trigger some type of further communication. This is in addition to having the battle plan, that you rightly, talked about, a little bit earlier and stuff. So, so continue on. You applied for the Sandlight.
Yeah. So we applied to the sandbox, and like I said, I didn't know anything about it. How many companies apply yearly? I mean, they pick the top 10, and then everybody gets on stage for a few minutes, gives a pitch, and then the judges vote on who is the winner for that year. So we did it, and we got accepted. Come to find out, I guess thousands of companies apply from around the planet to be in the Innovation Sandbox, and we were lucky enough to be one of the top 10. So we go there, we do our presentation. We did not win that year. However, as soon as you come off stage, you're just inundated with the biz dev guys from all the big companies handing you their business cards, wanting to know more, scheduling demos, and all that kind of stuff. And one of those companies in 2018 happened to be Microsoft, which made perfect sense because Microsoft started to focus on, Azure IoT Defender, and in the offering was the eventual acquisition of CyberX, which was an Israeli company that scans corporate networks for IoT. So you see that Microsoft is making progress towards IoT security as a focus, but that really didn't register with us completely at the time because we were so overwhelmed with what was going on. We kept in touch. We had, the customary emails, introductions between various members of the Microsoft team. And then, things kind of went silent after a while, as they typically do in any, corporate sales cycle. So we didn't give it much thought, and we just kind of put it on the back burner for a while. And then suddenly the same guy that met me back in 2018, just last year before COVID, became a full-on pandemic, reached out and said, hey, I want to reintroduce you to some people here at Microsoft. They're looking at more IoT firmware security stuff. I remembered you from your RSA days and thought there might be something that you guys might be able to learn from one another. So okay, great, let's chat and see what happens. So we get a handful of requests from Microsoft to be trial users of our platform, which is fine. I mean, we offer trial accounts to people, and things were going well. And then the trial came to an end. Hey, can we extend the trial? Okay, it's Microsoft. Sure, why not? We'd love to have Microsoft as a customer. So give them another month's worth of trial and see what happens. And then they ask for more people to be added to the trial. And it's like, okay, this is kind of odd. Are these guys actually going to buy the product because they've been using it now for a while? And this isn't cool.
Are they having trouble with technology or something?
Yeah, I don't know. So it's all this big hubbub, with amongst the employees, and it's like, well, we really don't know what they're up to, but they're using it. I mean, we see them that they can actually upload stuff, and when they run into problems, we fix it for them, and give them feedback, and they're giving us feedback. And then it got to the point where we started thinking, okay, they're probably going to want us to be a partner in something they're building. That's probably what they're testing to see if that's the case. Well, I think what the turning point for me personally was when at the end of an extensive trial, I think it was the summer of last year, they wanted to get on the phone with my co-founder and CTO to talk about how the tech actually works. And it's like, okay, this is kind of scary because if we lift our skirt too much, they're going to be able to basically see everything and maybe go build this thing on their own, which would not be cool for us because, I mean, you're up against Microsoft that could snuff us out in a second.
Did you, I'm sure the answer is yes, but you signed a non-disclosure?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, no, we did an NDA, but,
still,
I haven't read case law to see, how well NDAs hold up. But I mean, can you imagine our lawyers going against Microsoft lawyers? There's no contest. No contest. So we rolled the dice. We said, okay, hopefully this turns out for the better. So we gave them, detailed technical briefs and overviews of how stuff worked. And then after that call, we kind of looked at each other and said, I bet they're going to buy us. I mean, you wouldn't spend this much time and get this much detail just to become a customer. Huh. And possibly a partner, but man, those were some really deep questions. I bet they make us an offer, but we didn't know. And then in late summer, early fall last year, they basically got on a call with us and said, we'd like to make an offer for your company. And so we were floored. It was, and it made sense. It made sense because they had already acquired CyberX. Microsoft has already a well-established track record of doing software updates and patch management and all that kind of stuff. That is what we, ReFirm Labs, as a company lacked. We could not go into a corporate environment and scan your network and tell you how many IoT devices are out there, what types they are, and where they are.
Well, that's what
don't do
that. CyberX.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what CyberX does.
Right.
Microsoft already knows how to patch software and push out updates. That was another thing we lacked. We can tell you in your firmware where the problem is, but we don't offer any type of remediation. Our remediation solution is, well, here's the outdated CVE, or here's the vulnerability. Either go back and rewrite your code, or if it's a CVE that you're suffering from, then go download the latest library and rebuild your image. So it's not an automated solution at all. It's only automated in the sense that we can take your firmware, look at it, show you where all the problems are. What I would equate it to is, your pants are down and I can tell you that you need a belt, and you say, great, give me a belt. It's like, well, I don't sell the belt. I just tell you that your pants are down.
Well, I have no response to that because there was sort of an infamous picture of me when we were moving, in our home. I had no furniture and I forgot that I had a show to do. And so we actually took an ironing board, and I didn't have pants on. I had shorts, but I didn't think about that. So I'm sitting here at an ironing board, and I call myself Iron Man, and I'm doing a live show to, a lot of important people and stuff like that. And then we go off air, and then someone said, "Did you have pants on?" And I went, oh my God, because you could kind of see below the ironing board, you could see my legs, but of course I had pants on. Anyways, that here nor there. Let's roll this tape for our audience here so they can get
Sure.
a little bit more complete understanding of the stuff you're doing, and then we'll catch up with you on the end of this.
Okay.
In a complex and connected world, someone, somewhere, is always lurking in the shadows, with the nation's critical infrastructure directly in their crosshairs, waiting for the right time and the perfect opportunity to strike. Will you have done everything in your power to prevent a catastrophe? What will be the cost? In the end, will you and your company pay the price? Protect yourself and your company today with the Centrifuge platform. Built for military operations, the Centrifuge platform protects critical assets. We know how and where the adversary hides because we were the adversary. From flawed components to deeply hidden back doors, the Centrifuge platform proactively stops threats before they happen. So be secure, be strong. ReFirm Labs has your back.
All right, so going back to something I mentioned a little bit earlier, so let's use a Likert scale. So on the scale of, on one side, we have FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the other side, we have fun. Where would you place that commercial, or what I just showed the audience?
I had fun making a FUD commercial.
Okay, that's very clever.
Thing on my laptop.
That's very clever. I know. I mean, do you think that the announcer guy is at home? Pass me the ketchup, dear. I mean, come on. That like, I wanted to run away as soon as I heard it, but it did catch my attention.
Look, it was interesting. I put that together maybe a year ago, 6-9 months ago, something like that. And there haven't been a lot of IoT-based attacks that have crippled critical infrastructure. Now, you could point to the coastal pipeline, where
Colonial.
Now that wasn't IoT. That was ransomware.
Right.
But the same thing could happen with an IoT-based attack vector.
Yeah.
So there is some legitimacy there, but again, this is an ad to make people aware of us, and I know it's over the top. I mean, it's a given, but you got to catch people's attention in this hyper-connected social media world where people are trying to get a message across in 140 characters. So I have to have visually stunning, stop in your tracks, what the hell is this video to say, hey, look, firmware's a problem. Talk to us, and we can actually show you real live examples of what we mean. So, and it seemed to have worked.
Yeah, it worked with me. So where does our audience get more information about ReFirm?
They can just go to the website right now, refirmlabs.com. At some point in the future, I don't have a date when, that property will get absorbed into Microsoft's ecosystem. But as of today, right now, you can still go to refirmlabs.com and check out the platform and the demo. And if you're interested, there's some forms there that you can fill out and send us an inquiry, and we'll get back to you.
Just on the branding question, just for a moment, based on what you just said, do you know, or do you anticipate, or what is your instinct about maintaining your own brand, or do you think your capabilities will just be branded Microsoft eventually?
I think it's going to be branded Microsoft. Now, we haven't seen the entire roadmap, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to put on Fortune 500 corporate CEO hat, I would probably want that brand to be absorbed, that tech to be absorbed into one of my flagship products, like IoT Defender.
Wait a minute, that's breaking news. Is this a scoop?
No, it's not necessarily a scoop. I think it's just common sense.
You
think about what they've been building towards their relentless focus on IoT security, the acquisition of CyberX, and then the acquisition of ReFirm Labs. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where we're going with this story.
What do you think is next along that kind of daisy chain, given the incredible vulnerability that IoT, devices represent, attack vectors everywhere? I mean, what would be the next piece? Like if our audience who are in a similar position as you, I mean, what should they be thinking or saying or doing to put them in position to be acquired by, a company like Microsoft?
Oh, geez, that's a good question, because, we never set out our design or desire to be acquired by anybody, actually. I mean, I knew what we offered was a feature. I knew we wouldn't be a standalone company forever, or even reach an IPO stage. I knew that we'd be an add-on to somebody's comprehensive suite of, whether it be software code analysis or some type of build platform. So it's really hard to say what people should be kind of pivoting or focusing on to be acquired by a company. I mean, I wouldn't even go into a business with the mindset that I'm doing this as the goal to be acquired. You just got to go into it and believe in what you're doing, that you're actually trying to solve a serious problem with your solution. And if your solution is good, the people who understand the broader picture are going to see that your product is the best, and they will approach you.
Forgive the interruption. I want to come back to that in 1 second, but I just like to go back to something that's incredibly relevant right now about offensive capability. So, of course, you're well aware of the recent attacks, SolarWinds, Microsoft Exchange, the meat packing company, I can't remember the initials, but
JBS, I think it was.
Sorry, yeah, thanks. JBS and stuff like that. So, and now Ann Neuberger and Jen Easterling and her team over at the White House put out a position paper setting forth some changes, that are going to be going forward. What is your take on offensive capabilities, right now, like real life?
Well, my take is they're warranted. They're needed. We have to have not only just the people within government working on offensive capabilities, but we need people in private industry, because they can move a hell of a lot faster than government can. I mean, I've lived the government's offensive cyber ecosystem. I've been there, and things don't move at the speed of light. That's why I started Tactical Network Solutions many years ago, was to accelerate that capability of developing these offensive solutions for these government customers, because I knew they couldn't do it fast enough. And if somebody did figure out a way, they sure as hell wasn't going to share it, based on my experience at the NSA when it came to sharing capabilities. So, if there are companies out there or people thinking about starting companies around offensive capabilities, I say go for it and niche down. Don't try to be everything to everybody. Pick your lane, find something you're really good at, and just stick to it. Ignore everybody else around you. Just like we focused on reverse engineering firmware and finding vulnerabilities, many voices said, oh, you need to consider, web apps. You need to consider mobile apps. You need to look at, exploiting cellular networks. It's like, no, we are not going to do that. Sure, there's probably money there. That's not our expertise. Sure, we could probably hire people to do that, but that's not what we're good at. That's not what we built our reputation and name on. We're sticking to what we know, and hopefully sooner or later it'll pay off. And it paid off by Microsoft acquiring ReFirm Labs.
Wow. Well, on that note, on behalf of a grateful digital universe, Terry, thanks so much for who you are and what you've done, and the service to our country, and big shout out to you for this really great news.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're welcome. And for those of you out here who would like to be a guest on our show, just send an email to Gary at cyberheroescomics.com, and stay tuned. We're going to be announcing the launch of the Cyber Hero Network, which is going to be a suite of technology-based services on our portal that bring together buyers and sellers of different things, people who want jobs, people who are looking to hire people, and just basically attempting to help solve some of the problems and solutions that I've been the beneficiary of listening, learning from over these past years from great folks like Terry. So stay tuned. Lots of more interesting stuff to come, and have a great day.
Thanks, Gary.